I'm Dave. I've spent pretty much my entire adult life working in video journalism and media. But what is media and what forms does it take? Let me show you an example. This is quipu. It was used by the Incas in South America. It's a system of knots and strings, and every knot, the shapes, the colors, dimensions, numbers, all of it works together to tell a story. I can't make heads or tails of that. I don't know if you can imagine something like that today on social media, but just to put that as an image, this is what it might look like. This is actually the first chapter of Twilight. But while you and I may not understand quipu or how it works, this is a form of media. And let me give you another example of media from across the pond in around 370 BC. So Plato wrote this story where he was imagining a conversation with his real-life teacher, Socrates, and a student, Phaedrus. Sorry, this is kind of hard to read. Let me fix. That's better. Okay. Can everyone understand it now? Okay. Just to translate it for you quickly. Eventually, the conversation veers into a debate about speech giving and whether or not you should do it. Kind of like TED moderators deciding whether or not I should be at this event. Spoiler alert, I'm here. So I think I'm supposed to be. Anyway, the conversation eventually veers into another part where Plato, as Socrates, says that the written word is actually bad, that it could be misinterpreted and taken out of context. So in other words, people have always been afraid of media and how it could be manipulated. So hundreds of years later, when the first films to ever come out, black and white, it's a train platform. This is a French film, so these are all French people and a French train, I presume. That train is coming really fast. Done! Did you guys see that? Oh, okay. He was coming right at us. Anyway, rumor has it that's how people reacted to it when they first saw it in theaters. They jumped out of the way. Very scary. We just weren't ready for that type of media yet. Decades later, in 1938, there was a radio broadcast that scared a lot of Americans. Here's a snippet of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
Special
At 20
bulletin?
minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars.
Mars?
The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving toward the Earth with enormous velocity.
Did you guys hear that's coming towards Earth? So we all know that that didn't really happen, but people listening thought it did. And it was an Orson Welles broadcast, and this is him talking to reporters, explaining what happened. Those reporters look very concerned, and they have reason to be, because people heard this broadcast and were literally in the streets forming mobs. There was police officers outside the CBS studios in New York, and the network executives were trying to shut the broadcast down. It was a widespread issue. The CBS affiliate in Cleveland, where the host was the Future Tonight Show host, Jack Parr, he was there trying to convince listeners that it was a fictional story, but they didn't believe him. People were calling in and saying, no, this is happening. He's like, no, this is an adaptation of War of the Worlds. It's fictional. It's not real. And so every time there's a new form of media, we have to adapt. You guys remember email chains? I dug this one up the other day. Don't delete this. Scared the crap out of me. This is starting to sound familiar. Once there was a man giving 10x, suddenly it all went to chaos. Forward this email. Everyone forward it. Get out your phones. Forward. So obviously we figured out eventually that these emails were scams, and so were the Nigerian princes that shared them, though my Nigerian prince was real. Basically, I spent a lot of my job as a journalist trying to explain to people what they're getting wrong online versus actually talking about breaking news, because all of this is so complicated. And there's a word for that in understanding media. It's called media literacy, which is best defined as the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create media in various forms. So I kind of soft-launched my career into media literacy with this viral Pez video. I don't know if anyone saw this. This was back in 2021. It was someone showing you a Pez dispenser and that you can actually load it by putting the candy in through the bottom. That is patently false. I was very angry to see this video going viral and all the comments saying, wow, I didn't know that. Well, you didn't know it because it wasn't true. And as someone who's made 5,000 journalism TikToks, I was like, I'm getting to the bottom of this. Here's the video.
You may have seen a TikTok recently in which someone takes a fully wrapped stack of Pez candy and puts it in the bottom of a Pez dispenser, and then it comes out fully unwrapped. It's fake. There's a plastic bottom here that the candy would not be able to get around. I instantly knew this because I was a super cool and totally normal kid that collected 400 Pez dispensers. But what about the other people that were also totally normal and cool kids that didn't see the obvious cut in that TikTok? Video in particular can be a very powerful vehicle for misinformation. And when it's something much more important than a Pez dispenser, it can be really dangerous too. Here's some false claims that were made on the internet just last week.
My editor suggested the last one. Who knows if that's true. Anyway, so, unless you were a Pez head like me, that story wasn't probably that important to you, but it was a nice way into talking about media literacy, especially on TikTok, where people were taking what they saw at face value and not really challenging it. And sometimes what happens is that everything you see online, people think is true. So one example of that, more recently, up to date in 2025, is this video from Will Smith's social media team. He was on a tour. Some of you, I heard some grumbles. Get ready for your minds to be blown. Because this video was a compilation of a lot of the crowds at his different concerts going through Europe, and it was pretty clearly AI generated. There's a lot of extra fingers on these people. Though I do like this guy. He's like, I'm not real, but yeah! Anyway, people were understandably pretty upset about this, and they were really upset not just that it was AI generated, but that it appeared that Will Smith tried to generate people holding signs like this, which is obviously pretty upsetting. Will Smith is someone who is perhaps a little polarizing after his Oscar performance at the award show, and for some people who feel a certain way about him, it was very easy to get very angry about this video. But it turns out the truth is much more complicated. This is an AI-generated crowd, but it comes from real photos of the real crowds at Will Smith's concerts. So here's a more in-depth look.
You may have seen the videos posted on Will Smith's Instagram and YouTube account that are almost definitely AI generated. A lot of the hands have like a bajillion fingers. One sign says for a 6 instead of fresh. And generally speaking, people just look off. They all kind of look like this. This AI is so obvious. I can't believe they thought we would fall for this. Well, these may actually be real Will Smith fans. What? No, they aren't. The video is very likely AI generated, but the photos themselves seem to actually come from people at the concerts. Look at this. The photo matches the video, but instead, everyone looks real. And this clip looks like it was taken from this photo. So the video is fake, but the people are real. Exactly. But the video he posted on YouTube is even more fake. Huh? Just last week, the YouTube creator Liaison admitted that YouTube is using image enhancement to unblur and denoise YouTube shorts. Okay, so YouTube is using AI. He's arguing that image enhancement is not the same thing as AI because it's a lot like the technology that most of your smartphones use when you're taking a video. Anyway, YouTube says they'll soon have a button where you can opt out. It's a good thing we have a media literacy class. Oh, this class isn't real. It's for a video. What? Are you even the vice president?
I'm not the vice president, but I am considering shaving my beard. That comparison is happening a lot. It's been a really long year. Anyway. These people don't have enough extra fingers on their hands to count how many times we get stuff wrong on TikTok or anywhere in media. It's just really hard to keep up. And it's also hard to keep up with what's happening and where things even came from, like a rapture prediction. Do you guys know there was a rapture in September? Oh, I guess none of us made it. So this rapture happened, and people were all over TikTok, and they were talking about how they were going to leave food for their kids in case their kids aren't raptured, which is, I don't know, maybe that might be a parenting issue. Anyway, they're making all these TikToks, and I'm watching all these and kind of secretly enjoying them a little bit, but also wondering, why is no one questioning where this prediction came from and why it happened? It turns out the prediction wasn't on TikTok, it came from YouTube. It was this guy from South Africa who said that in 2018 he had a dream that a rapture was coming in September 2025, but for some reason he waited until 2025 to post a YouTube video about it. Anyway, I had to make a more in-depth video for the people, the pre-raptured masses.
The rapture is happening. Oh my God, what do we do? What do we do?
No, I don't see anything in here about a rapture.
That's because the rapture isn't in there.
Okay, but I saw it on TikTok, so.
Everything I see online is true.
Okay, let's take this one chunk at a time.
Fine, hurry up.
There's only a few hours left according to this weird clock.
The actual word rapture isn't in the Bible, but there is a possible reference.
I knew it.
In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16, Paul describes the living being caught up in the clouds together with the dead.
But that could mean anything.
Right. And as far as today's rapture prediction goes, it just came from a YouTube video of some guy in South Africa saying that the rapture was coming.
There's a date.
There is a date.
Yeah, and he's a pastor, right?
Nope, he's just a dude who said he saw Jesus in a dream in 2018.
But why today? Why this year?
He said it was because of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. What? Look, rapture predictions aren't new, and they often take off during uncertain times.
That makes sense.
Yeah, for example, I don't even know if I'd be able to watch Jimmy Kimmel tonight because ABC brought him back, but the affiliates Sinclair and Nexstar have still banned him. And so there's a lot of uncertainty around that.
Very specific example, but yeah.
Anyway, it does make sense, though, that people had an emotional reaction to something like a rapture. We've always had emotional reactions to media. It's because we're afraid of it a lot of the time. And it turns out that fear and misinformation travel 6 times faster than the truth. So what emotion is more powerful than fear? I think, I don't know, whoa! I think it's humor. And humor is my way into informing the masses and really kind of meeting them where they are, because it's much easier to talk to someone when you make yourself the butt of the joke, and rather than talk down to someone. They're not necessarily going to respond to that. And so by using humor, I've always been able to make these videos and kind of find my way into this world of misinformation and scary media. This was all a long con to get that photo, by the way. Now, if you went back in time and handed 7-year-old me an iPhone, I wouldn't know what to do with it. I thought my dog was a footrest, right? We've always been scared of different forms of media. So my argument is that ultimately, we don't need to be scared of media as long as we acknowledge that every time there's a new form of media, a new unprecedented form, we can overcome it and be a little bit less scared and have a little more fun. I'm not afraid of you. Thank you.